Welcome, wonderful students, to Lesson 5 of the Living World topic. In this lesson, we're going to be exploring the largest type of ecosystem called a biome. You're going to understand what this actually means and where you find them around the world and what makes a biome a biome. Really important idea today. Make sure that you write the date, title, and learning objective and have a pen and paper ready to learn. Okay. Time to review prior learning. Write 1 to 10, answer the questions from memory, and then mark your answers. Game time. Number 1. The wolf was reintroduced to Yellowstone National Park in the USA, leading to a significant rise in biodiversity and amount of vegetation. 2. A keystone species has a very important role in an ecosystem, and removing it leads to biodiversity loss. For example, the wolf. 3. The Buffelsdry afforestation project in South Africa led to increased biodiversity. 4. A nature reserve or national park is a protected natural area that cannot be damaged by human activities such as logging. 5. Eutrophication is the excess of nutrients in a water body, which causes algal blooms that kill plants, leading to a loss of oxygen. 6. The species in an ecosystem are interdependent, which means that a change in the population of one affects the population of others. 7. The nutrient cycle describes how energy moves through an ecosystem. 8. The informal economy describes people in jobs that are not protected by contracts, pay no taxes, nor have bank accounts. 9. Volcanic eruptions can cause temporary global cooling because they release a gas that reflects sunlight called sulfur dioxide, the opposite of a greenhouse gas. 10. Building sea defences and planting drought-resistant crops are examples of climate change adaptations. Give yourselves a mark out of 10. If you got 8 or above, I salute you, well done. If you got any wrong, make sure you write the questions and their answers and then test yourselves on them. Immense. To introduce this idea of a biome, I'm going to show you a picture of a type of ecosystem that you will definitely recognise and a map of where you find it in the world. And I'd like you to answer the questions about these photos next to them. Go for it. Okay. Number 1. What is a tropical rainforest? I'm sure most of you watching this have heard of a rainforest, but can you actually define what it is? So you should have put, if you thought about it, that a tropical rainforest is a forest with a hot and wet climate that exists between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. That's why it's a tropical rainforest. 2. Why are there no rainforests in the UK up here? You may have said, if you thought about it deeply, that although it rains a lot in the UK, or we think it doesn't rain enough to form rainforests. Not only that, it's not hot enough to lead to the growth of plants and animals that occurs in rainforests. So the climate is not right in the UK. Where are tropical rainforests found in the world and why? So, as I mentioned earlier, tropical rainforests, you should have said, are found between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, mostly along the equator. Why, as we will explore in future lessons, is because there's heavy rainfall here constantly throughout the year. It's also hot here, creating the perfect conditions for a rainforest to form. 4. What happens to average temperatures on Earth as you travel further north and further south of the equator? Well, you should have said that average temperatures decrease the further north and the further south you go from the equator. And this is because of the angle of the sun to the Earth. It's most direct at the equator and least direct at the poles. I will explain this further in future lesson. Okay, so this lesson, what is a biome? What biomes does the world have? And where are they? Let's go for it. Write the word and the definition. So a biome is a large ecosystem found around the world that has similar vegetation and climate. Let me show you what that means. Here's an example of a biome. The tropical rainforest is a biome. Why? Because here's tropical rainforest in Central Africa. Here is tropical rainforest in South America. and here is tropical rainforest in Southeast Asia. They all have similar vegetation, they are all very large ecosystems, and they are all found around the world, and they have similar climates. Therefore, they are part of the same biome. All these three places are part of the same biome, tropical rainforests. Similar vegetation, similar climate. Another example to help you understand this. Hot deserts are also a biome. Western USA, North Africa, Australia. These three ecosystems have the same conditions. They have very similar types of vegetation. Small shrubs, very few trees. They have hot and dry climates. Therefore, they are a biome. They're very large, they have similar vegetation and similar climates. And they're found all around the world. So hot deserts are a biome. A shrub is not a biome. A small piece of sand here is not a biome, but the whole desert is a biome because it's found in a similar condition around the world. And what makes a hot desert a desert? Well, a desert is defined by the amount of rainfall it gets every year. And deserts get a maximum of 250 millimeters of rainfall every year. So if you put this outside, it would fill up to 250 millimeters on average every year. Another biome is the polar biome. In Greenland, near the North Pole, and Antarctica, South Pole. Two opposite places in the world, but very similar conditions. The climate's almost the same, both very cold and dry. Additionally, similar vegetation, or in the case of both of these two, almost no vegetation at all. So, large ecosystems found in many places around the world that have similar vegetation and climates. So the polar areas are a biome. What is a biome not? What kinds of things are not a biome? Well, a pond is not a biome because it's too small. Not only that, a pond is not a biome because you find ponds around the world, but they have very different conditions. For example, a pond near the Amazon rainforest would have very different types of species within it, very different climate as well, and very different vegetation to a pond found in Kent in England, for example. Therefore, ponds are not biomes. They're too small, and around the world they have different types of vegetation, different climates. A continent is also not a biome. This is Africa, and each of these colours shows a different biome, and as you can see, continents like Africa have lots of different biomes within them. Hot desert biome in the north of Africa, and rainforest biome in the central area. Continents are not biomes because they have multiple different types of ecosystems within them. Okay. What are the world's different biomes? I want you to imagine you're going on an adventure and you're going to travel from the center of the world, the equator, to the North or the South Pole. What different climates and ecosystems would you find along the way? Well, I'll tell you this, you're going to need to pack a lot of very different type of clothes and equipment because it's going to get very different on the way. At the equator, what do you need? You need short sleeve clothes, you need insect repellents, you need an umbrella, you need boots because you're in the tropical rainforest at the equator. Right on the equator, tropical rainforest, that's our first biome. You walk north. You're going north towards the north of Africa. Eventually, the trees start to thin out and the rain starts to become less, and you arrive at a biome called the savanna grasslands where you find animals like elephants and lions. It's drier here. There are fewer trees, mostly grasses. You keep walking. The trees start to die out and disappear. There's fewer grass and the large animals disappear as well. Now you arrive at the hot deserts. It's unbearably hot. You don't need your umbrella anymore. You need your short-sleeved clothes and you need lots of water. Keep walking and you get to the Mediterranean, so you go east towards Asia and you keep walking north. It starts to get colder and the grasses return. And now you know you're at the temperate grasslands. It's colder. It's not wet enough for many trees, but there are lots of grasses and the big animals start to return. You're in a biome called the temperate grasslands. Keep walking north again and the climate changes yet again. And now you arrive in Europe. And it's wetter than in the temperate grasslands and slightly warmer. And you arrive at temperate forest. Similar climate, but now there are far more trees. This is what we have in England. Keep going, and even though it's cold in England, it gets much colder still. Now you need a coat, and you need gloves, and you need a hat, because you've arrived in the coniferous forest or taiga biome. Long trees called conifer trees, which are evergreen trees, they never lose their leaves, found in the coniferous forest biome. It often freezes throughout the year. Walk further north still and the trees die away because it gets so cold that you're now in the tundra biome. Almost at the northernmost part of the world, only small shrubs and bushes live here, and there's far fewer plants and animals. It's so much colder than anywhere else so far. And finally, you reach Greenland, and then you walk across the ice to the Arctic Circle, and you're at the very top of the world, and you are in the polar biome, the coldest of them all. And it's in the North Pole and in Antarctica in the South Pole. It's freezing cold all year round, and almost no plants or animals live here. These are the 8 main biomes of the world. I'm going to tell you more now about each one of them, where you find them, and what it's like there. Join me. So we start our journey with the tropical rainforests. Key fact: tropical rainforests are found mostly along the equator, where you have a hot and wet climate all year round. They have the highest biodiversity of any ecosystem. They take up only 6% of the world's land surface, but they have more than half of all the species of plants and animals. A climate graph of a place in the rainforest shows this. Tropical rainforests have constant temperatures all year round, and relatively similar, very high rainfall throughout the year. They have no seasons. There's no autumn, winter, spring, summer. It's the same temperature and amount of rainfall almost the entire year. No matter what month you're in, you have the same conditions in a tropical rainforest. What's next? Savanna grasslands, north and south. So savanna grasslands are located further north and south of the equator, about 15 to 20 degrees north and south of the equator. They're drier than tropical rainforests, and because they're drier, fewer trees can grow, but there's enough water for grasses to grow. The climate graph of the savanna grasslands look like this. Now we have very distinct seasons. While the temperature is fairly constant throughout the year, changing only by about 5 or 10 degrees, the rainfall is very different in some parts of the year to others. There's a wet season in the summer in the northern hemisphere, and a wet season in the winter in the southern hemisphere. So in the southern hemisphere here, the wet season, these bars here, would be in between November and February. In the northern hemisphere here, the wet season is in the summer months. This wet season means that plants have to grow really fast to take advantage of that water. Grass grows very successfully in savanna because of the wet season, and they can survive the lack of water for a long time. Trees often can't. The savanna grasslands. Move further north still and south still, and you get to the most difficult place to live in so far, the hot deserts. Hot deserts have very low biodiversity because most plants and animals can't survive the lack of rainfall, which averages 250 millimeters a year. Very little, it's about a fifth of the United Kingdom's, and the intense heat of a summer day. The climate graph of a place in a hot desert around the world looks like this. Big difference in temperature between the summer and the winter. In the summer months, they get scorchingly hot. It says 35 degrees here, but they can get up to 50, 55 degrees, and much colder in the winter. This is because they have almost no clouds, which means the heat escapes in the winter into space, and because the sunlight is at an angle, it doesn't heat the ground up as much anymore, so it gets very cold. I'll explain that to you more in a future lesson. The key feature of hot deserts, though, is the almost complete lack of precipitation throughout the year. There are very little wet seasons or dry seasons. Any rain that the hot desert does get happens in a few big storms throughout the year, not regular rainfall like in the UK. The ecosystems in hot deserts are very fragile because there is very low biodiversity. If one species is damaged or killed off, that affects the whole ecosystem. Move further north and you get to the temperate grasslands found in places like North America, where it's called the prairies, or Asia, where it's called the steppe, Steppes. And there's also some in southern Africa and in South America. Now the steppe are different to the savanna grasslands because they're colder. Similar amounts of rainfall though, like this here. The steppe have a big range of temperatures, rising to up to 25 degrees in the summer, but dropping to as low as -10 or even lower in the winter. This means that animals have to be very tough to survive. They need to be adaptable to both extremes of temperature. Additionally, just like the savanna, there's a distinct wet and dry season. This means that grasses grow successfully, but trees do not. Move further north still, and you get to Europe and the temperate forest. Many, many millions of people live in temperate forest ecosystems. In China, you have the biggest cities in the world, some of them, and Japan, and Sydney, for example, and Melbourne in Australia, and New Zealand, and you have New York and Washington and places in Florida, and of course you have Europe. Live all in the temperate forest biome. Why is this so easy to live in? It has a mild climate. Let me show you. Here is the climate graph for temperate forest. The temperature range isn't so big anymore. The maximum on average in summer is 20 degrees and the average in the winter is 5 degrees. This means it's much more bearable for plants and animals to grow. Additionally, in temperate forest biome, there's regular rainfall throughout the year. This is really helpful for trees to grow. Now the biodiversity increases because trees can grow, providing habitat and more food. Move further north still though, and that changes again. Now we reach the coniferous forest and the taiga biome, which is a large biome that extends all across North America and across northern Asia, also called the taiga. It's similar to temperate forest, only much colder in many parts of the year, so many species of tree that live in temperate forest can't survive in coniferous forest. That's why you have evergreen trees. Evergreen trees never drop their leaves like trees in England and in temperate forest do. Here's a climate graph for coniferous forest. Some similarities. There is a big temperature range. However, look at the difference in temperature. In coniferous forest, it gets up to 15 degrees, relatively warm, which allows trees to grow, but it drops all the way down to -30 or below in winter, which makes it extremely difficult for many species of animal and plant to survive throughout the whole year. As a result, biodiversity in coniferous forest is much lower than in temperate forest. The rainfall is also lower because, as you'll discover, there's higher air pressure, which I will explain later. This means that fewer species of plants can survive. So coniferous forest exists across the two main northern hemisphere continents of North America and Asia. Go further north still and life gets more difficult. Now you're in the tundra biome, which most people will never visit in their lives. It is almost unbearable. Very few human settlements, cities or towns are in the tundra biome because life is so harsh here. It is cold throughout the year. It is dry for most of the year, and very few species of plants and animals live here. The plants that do live here are mostly bushes and shrubs that can survive the cold temperatures. Here's the climate graph for the tundra biome. It almost never makes it above 5 degrees or above freezing, which means that the water in trees freezes up, and so plants that are able to survive here have the water underground, access to water underground, and they're very good at resisting cold temperatures. It drops to at least -25 for much of the year, and the rainfall precipitation in the tundra biome is very low indeed. As a result, biodiversity in tundra biome is lower even than in the coniferous biome. And finally, in places like Greenland and around the North Pole and in Antarctica, you have the polar biome, the harshest of them all. It is permanently freezing below 0 degrees throughout the year. In Antarctica, where this photo is taken, there are almost no species of plants. Only 2 exist. One of them is a lichen, which is a tiny little type of plant that's almost flat against rocks, and the other one is a form of algae. Really small plant as well that lives on the surface of snow. You may have heard of penguins and polar bears and a few seals, but very few species of animals live on the land in the polar biome. Here is the climate graph. It never goes above freezing. Average temperatures are below minus 20 degrees Celsius, and there's almost no rainfall. What precipitation does fall falls as snow, and so you get huge build-ups of snow, and then the snow compacts to become ice. This makes life in the polar biome extremely difficult. Okay, time to see if you've learned anything. I'm going to show you pictures of the 8 biomes without labels, and I'm going to show you the 8 names of the different biomes, and I want you to match up the names with the pictures. So write 1 to 8, and then write the name of the biome next to the correct number. Go for it. So number 1, you should have said that's the polar biome. Number 2, savanna grassland. Number 3, temperate forest. 4, tundra. 5, hot deserts. 6, coniferous forest or taiga. 7, temperate grassland. 8, tropical rainforest. Give yourself a mark out of 8. If you're not sure, go back, watch the explanations again. Second check for learning, okay? I'm going to show you 3 climate graphs of 3 different biomes. I'm not going to tell you what they are. Then labeled A, B, and C. Write 1 to 14, and then next to each number, write the correct letter that matches up with the correct climate graph. So 14 statements, write the correct letter next to each number. Number 1, you should have put C is at the highest latitude. If you don't know latitudes, I'm going to explain that to you again in a future lesson. It means how far you are from the equator. Highest latitude means furthest from the equator. Lowest latitude means closest to the equator. C has the highest latitude because it gets colder the further from the equator you go. As you can see, it's the coldest in C. 2, it is found around the equator. A. Around the equator you have no seasons. So A is also 3. 4, the average temperature range is about 15 degrees. B, look at the red line, calculate it. 5, there is constant temperature throughout the year. A again, constant temperature, red line. 6, it has evergreen trees that remain with their leaves the whole year round. A again. Because there are no seasons, no winter and no summer, the trees do not need to drop their leaves in a rainforest, and therefore they remain evergreen because that gives them more opportunity to soak up as much light as possible and grow as large as possible. This allows them to survive and win the competition against other trees that are trying to fight for light. 7, it has the highest biodiversity. A. 8, it has the lowest biodiversity. C. 9, it is the tundra. C. 10, it is the temperate forest biome. B. 11, it is the tropical rainforest biome. A. 12, it has average annual rainfall of 600 millimeters. B. So calculate this, it's about 50 millimeters per month times 12, 600. 13, it has average annual rainfall of about 175 millimeters. You should have said it's A. Its rainfall range, is about 175 millimeters. So between the top and the bottom, the highest amount of rainfall per month and the lowest is about 175 millimeters. And 14, its driest months are in the summer. A. Summer months, they are the driest. Summer months, not the driest. Summer months, not the driest. Give yourselves a mark out of 14. If you didn't fully understand this, go back, watch the explanations of the climate graphs and their biomes again. Okay, I'm going to show you some questions now to embed the learning. Answer them using your understanding, and then mark your answers using the green. Go. Number 1, what are the 2 main features of a biome? Any 2 of these. This middle one is the most important one, and the fact they're large. 2, explain why tropical rainforests have a high density of evergreen trees. 2 points. They have a stable, hot and wet climate throughout the year, so it's constant temperature and rainfall. This means that trees have ideal conditions to grow. 2 marks. If you didn't get this, again, go back and watch it again. Make sure you've added the corrections. 3, explain why there are grasses but fewer trees in savanna and temperate grasslands. 2 marks. There are wet and dry seasons in savanna. Make sure you use that word distinct. It means there's a clear difference between the 2. Insufficient water. Insufficient means not enough. Grasses can cope with less water. A mark. 4, describe the distribution around the world of the world's hot deserts. You should have said that Most hot deserts are located around 30 degrees north and south of the equator. For example, the Sahara Desert in North Africa. 5. Using the climate graph of Omsk, this city in Russia, suggest its biome and justify your choice. So look at this climate graph and tell me what biome it is and give me a reason. The climate graph of Omsk has a large range of temperatures. The lowest temperature is about minus 17. Highest temperature is about 20. 1 mark. So Omsk is most likely in the temperate grassland biome. The precipitation is seasonal as well. There are big differences between the seasons. And it's also too high for the coniferous forest biome. Give yourself a mark out of 2. Add up your score in total and give yourselves a mark. Make sure that you correct your answers with any green pen where you've missed anything. Excellent. From this lesson, write 2 questions and answer them from memory. Additionally, this time I'd like you to write 2 facts about biomes from memory from this lesson, and I'd like you to go back and check them for accuracy. Before you move on to the next lesson, I strongly suggest you watch these 8 short videos and write notes about each of the biomes. They're really interesting and will help you to understand this better. Let me just quickly review one more thing with you that's really important. Each of these biomes has been ordered by their latitude, which means the horizontal lines around the world that show the distance from the equator. 0 degrees latitude, that means the angle is 0 degrees, means you're on the equator. 90 degrees latitude means you're either on the North Pole or the South Pole. Tropical rainforest is 0 degrees latitude, close to the equator. As you go this way, you get to higher latitudes, which means further from the equator. That also means you get colder. In the next few lessons, I'm going to explain the science behind why biomes are where they are in the world. So you're going to understand more and recap more your knowledge about how climates are formed in different areas of the world. Very important topic. Join me then.